Jessica, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with me today. I've been really looking forward to this for a while. I think, particularly for a trans woman, it's really, really brave for you to step up on the situation with the trans people in sports. So, can you tell me how you got into that, and maybe some background about yourself and about sports and those issues and where you are today with it?
Yeah, of course. I was from a child, I've been involved in motorsports. That's been my sport the whole time. I became more interested as I went through high school, and then I never turned professional. I didn't turn pro until I was in my late 20s, which is almost too late for that sport. In most sports, it is. But just being through sports in high school, I played the normals: basketball, football, some soccer, volleyball, stuff like that. So just I've been an athletic person all my life, and
Mhm.
I know what it takes to go through life. And like, I don't drink alcohol, so that's all due to my sports background, right? So every
Good for
weekend,
you.
yeah, Sunday is competition day, and I can't go out drinking Friday and Saturday because I'll feel like crap on Sunday. So
Right.
that was always just a deciding factor in my social life too. And I never really got the chance to. I mean, I had friends and would go to parties now and then, but it was mostly go to school, do your homework, go to practice, and get up and do it again tomorrow. So there's no
Right.
rest in that. And then as I got older, just the trans thing started weighing more heavily on my mind. And, I would sit in my race van, looking at the track as a teenager saying, gosh, I wish I was a female out there racing with these guys. And it never occurred to me. I guess the age thing too was back in my day, dating myself, 49 years old. We all know that. But back in my day, there wasn't a lot of women's divisions, Title IX wasn't even a thing until 1972. And,
Right.
so women in motocross just didn't exist. And, but I had that feeling. I was like, gosh, it'd be cool to be a girl doing all this stuff. So just growing through that, and then just knowing what I went through, and seeing the athletes today, the females that are having to struggle with this, and then to have a guy like me, yes, I call myself a guy, a guy like me, biological man, come in and just easily, take over that sport. That's not fair. And
Right.
that doesn't sit well with me, even though I am part of that community. I can't sit idle, and I can't sit by and let this happen. I have a 22-year-old daughter now. Sorry, she just turned 22, so getting used to saying that this year. She she never was a big sports person. She was more of a girly girl, which is fine by
Mhm.
me. I got her into some of my sports, motocross, and we would let her play soccer. She was a ladybug, and just even back then, watching her go through soccer, and you could watch on, you'd have all these kids playing soccer in different levels, and you could see the boys playing and the girls playing. Even as prepubescent kids, you could see a difference in the aggression, the skill level. And I hate being misogynistic, but the skill level's there even before puberty. And that's where we're running into problems now. That's how I got started in it. Just, I've been in sports and I've been an athlete all my life. And at one time I was a paid professional athlete. So I know what it means to have a victory stolen from you, or not be able to earn your living. Basically, my career depended on my podiums and my finishes and how I performed that weekend. So
Mhm.
if I failed weekend after weekend, I lose my ride, I lose my sponsorship, I lose everything. And just knowing that is enough to drive me. But in the end, it's just morally not right. So,
Yeah. So, what have you gotten a lot of backlash from the trans community specifically
oh
on what
yeah.
your stance is? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
there's a select group of trans and I mostly hang out on Twitter. I don't, and Instagram, but I don't use Instagram to interact with people. I only interact with people on Twitter. So yeah, there's a small group of us who believe what I believe, and you know, we're trying to make a difference, but it's hard. What we've
yeah.
noticed is, like you asked about the opposition, what we've noticed is that they scream louder, and it's like
Right.
I talk at nauseum about fairness in sports, but it falls on deaf ears, or it ends up in my echo chamber. And I've talked about this a lot. Is I don't want to talk to my echo chamber. I love my echo chamber. It feels good to get. It feels great to be reinforced in your values and your thoughts and your ideas, but it does nobody any good. I need to reach the progressive left, the liberals, the woke, whatever you want to call them. Those are the
Right.
people I need to target, and I need them to be my target audience, and they're not. but every now and then one of them catches wind of me, and then it's game on. They're like, "You're a bigot, you're a transphobe, and how can you turn against your own people?" And I say the same thing when I see, female congresswomen advocating for trans inclusion. I'm like, talk about, turning on your own people. Hello.
Right. And I think that, there's been a lot of discussion about women in general, biologic women in general, and how they seem to be more sympathetic to begin with to like trans women and making it inclusive and inviting them into spaces and things like that. And I think where a lot of it fell down was they failed to realize that sometimes they're letting people in that aren't really trans and don't really have good intentions. And it seems to be with the self-ID thing, that's where it seems to be getting worse.
They've never had anybody to tell them no,
Right.
and to
Right.
set some sense into them, and tell them that, look, you don't have to play in the girls sports division just to be a girl. Like, there are so many ways to be a woman. And I hear this from biological women. They tell me this all the time, that there are, there's no one way to be a girl. Right. And I know I'll never be a girl. Do I wish I was? Hell yeah. I would love
Would
that
you,
life.
if you could, so say God came down tomorrow and said, Jessica, you can be a woman for real. You would take that. You would take it.
Yeah. If I could do my life over again as a woman, I would do it. I don't get tired. I don't resent this, but feminists will come at me and say, you never know what it's like to grow up as a woman and be, looked at in a certain way all your life, and, have to be defensive and self-aware and cautious about your whole life, and no, I don't know what that's like. I know what this is like.
Yeah.
And it's tough,
and I think
but
that's an important thing to talk about because it is special. It is different than a biological woman's experience, but I think it's still just as valid, just in a different way. And I think that that's a marker that a lot of people are missing, is that it's okay to be a trans woman, and just like it's okay to be gay, or it's okay to, and you don't have to be stealth necessarily either. I know that there's a desire to be passable and pass as much as possible and all that stuff, and I know that that's sort of there's a lot of different thoughts about those things as well, but overall it's okay to be a trans woman. And all of a sudden, like, we're not even allowed to say the word trans woman. I mean, we're not even allowed to say the word homosexual anymore. What are we allowed to say?
it feels like it. Yeah, my Twitter account just got limited visibility yesterday. I posted on it and got a lot of traction. Over 138 people commented on it. But yeah, it was, I don't know if you saw it, I used the word cis, CIS, which I wasn't using it in the context that people would normally use it for. I was yelling at someone for using it, saying cis isn't a real word. Stop using it. You're either a biological woman, a biological man. You can be a trans woman or a trans man, but cis. So stop using it. And they flagged my account.
Very derogatory. They use it in a derogatory way.
A lot of that is Elon has a trans kid, and I think he's pushing back against it. And then a couple of weeks ago, I believe Elon came out and said he's going to register cis as a slur on Twitter. And then also the other thing is he just hired that manager, and she's female and she's totally lefty. She's a liberal, like progressive, super woke, and she's now in control of X. And that's scary. It's not even a free speech platform anymore. And that's rough, because that's what he prided it on, that it was the best open town hall you can have. There's no free speech without absolute, right? So you can't tell me that I'm not allowed to wish harm upon someone or wish somebody harm. That's freedom of speech. That is a terrible thing to say. I would never do that. I would never call to action violence, but it's still free speech. People are allowed to say that. So people wish a lot of mean things to me all the time. And I always tell them, that's your right. That's your opinion, and you're allowed to have it. And you should be thankful you live somewhere where you're allowed to voice that opinion. But, other countries.
And that's the thing, is that I think there's not only is it, all these issues with the trans stuff back and forth, but now we're in this phase of society, in American society, where it's cool to hate America for some reason. And I don't know if it's because this generation of kids, like, they didn't actually witness 9/11 happen, or like what it is, but it drives me insane, because it's like there really isn't any other place on earth that's this wonderful to live in and be this free to do what you want to do. And yet they're saying, we don't have LGBT rights and fighting for our rights. And I'm like, which ones? Like, I remember when same-sex marriage passed and all the laws about not discriminating in work and things like that. I just wanted to be able to be included in walk society without people judging me every step of the way, and make sure that I had fair rights to jobs and housing. And if I want to get married, I can. And that was the goal. And we we made all those goals, we've completed all those steps. So what are these rights that we don't have? I guess maybe the childhood transition thing is what they're actually talking about, which to me is absolutely ridiculous. I don't know what your thoughts are on all that. I'm sure they're probably similar to mine at this
Of
point.
course. And I never was in the fight for the lesbians and the gays to get married. I had nothing to do with it, and I am so proud that lesbian gays were able to get together and get that right to get. I do believe you could that lesbians and gays should always have that chance to be married and enjoy the same social economical benefits as a heterosexual straight couple would, with co-insurance, insurance, health insurance, all that. Gays deserve that as well. Like that's such neat. That to me that's a no-brainer. Like two women should be able to get married, and one can have a better job than the other and put the other one on the healthcare. That's like a no-brainer to me. The same as biological men do not belong in women's sports. It's like, I hope that the lesbian community and the gay community doesn't have to fight again for this right.
I know.
And even though, I support the right, the Republican Party, some of whom are a little bit extreme and would abolish the Gay Marriage Act. And God, that's just insane, of people call me conservative and tell me I'm crazy. How can I like join the party that hates me? But I get told that all the time.
Have you always been conservative?
Yes, actually, always. I don't like to say this too much because my mom watches my videos, but my hair is all sticking up. I grew up in a Democratic, like far left household, and I don't like saying this, but it's not a bad thing. My mom worked hard. She had at one point like it's the classic American tale. She had 3 jobs. I was raised by my grandparents because my mom was never home. My dad wasn't around. And that's not why I turned out like this. Like a lot of it's always stemmed from daddy issues, they say, but it's not the case with me. Like I just grew up. I didn't grow up dirt poor, but I didn't have a lot, I barely had a bicycle once a year. Maybe that was my big once a year gift, So just watching my mom be such a hardcore lefty just would break my heart that it burned in my mind that Democrat is not the way to be. Like liberal is poor. So I don't want to be poor. I want to be rich. And I just thought, what's the opposite of Democrats, Republicans? So, that's why I lean right all my life. And I find it funny these days that everybody is a leftist convert. And people that are on the right, they're like, oh, I was a liberal till up to 2 years ago. I was a liberal till COVID, and I almost want to gatekeep it. Like, no, you guys don't get to just switch. Like you voted for this shit that we're living in now. You deal with it and you stay on your side. I don't have that right to say that, but inside here, I'm thinking that 100%. All these people who were left and now are right, like I'm like, you can cheaters. You're jumping on the bandwagon, and I really hate it. Like it's not fair. It's like I've been sticking it out. I've been being made fun of all my life and being told I'm doing the wrong thing because I'm on the right and far right extremist. All my life, I get shit for this. And then you guys come in and now it's cool to be a Republican because, they're kind of not crazy like the left. So, yeah, I want to gatekeep that shit.
The ideas have shifted. Like now when you're left, it's like, it's collectivism too. It is literally like, if you aren't lockstep with every single thing that these people say, then you're a bigot, you're a piece of shit, you're a transphobe, I was called a self-hating queer recently. And I'm like, what? Like, so it's amazing to me how if you're LGBT, that means you have to vote for a Democrat. Any Democrat, doesn't matter. And every single Republican ever is horrible and awful and rotten and want to take your rights away. They just make that very clear distinction, like it's one polarization or another polarization. And I think, if anything, even if you don't like Trump, I think one of the things he did was kind of show what's going on there with both of those extreme sides back and forth. Because I remember through his whole presidency, everyone kept saying that he was anti-LGBT, and I was like, wasn't he the first? I believe he was the first president that supported same-sex marriage going into his presidency. He didn't go into his presidency saying, I don't think gays should get married. He never said that.
He hosted a gay wedding at Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah.
Literally a full gay wedding, like 100%, like 500 guests, all in the LGBT community. So and then
it's a weird thing because I think what I was worried about at that time but I've come to understand by talking more to some trans people and to doing some more research. What I was worried about was the whole ban on trans people in the military, because from my viewpoint, I thought if you want to serve in the military, you should be able to go fight for this country. That's wonderful. You know, that's where I was coming from.
Okay.
And what I realized was that there's a lot more nuance to that conversation when it involves trans people. And if they're in transition, I mean, because that's kind of that's a hard road to go through transition. And so I think part of the argument is that, you know, it's not safe. And so I'm like, okay, I can understand that. I can understand why he said, wait a minute, maybe we shouldn't be doing this. And I'm sure there's more to the story than just that.
That actually is one of the topics from my Jubilee debate that I had. This should trans be in the military? And
I remember that segment.
Yeah,
it
Blair,
it turned into a different conversation.
It did. It switched really quickly. But Sarah Higdon, my teammate, she's in the military, or she's former military. And Blair also said that sure, trans could be in the military as a line cook, a medic, you know, a technician, a computer operator. There is so much demand for the behind the scenes work in the military. Of course, trans could be in there. That's fine. But as far as frontline, you know, pilots, grunts, you know, just, I don't know all the military branches, but you know what I'm saying? Like, as far as out there fighting hand-to-hand combat and driving tanks and trucks and fixing trucks in the middle of the desert when the truck breaks down, like, no, trans, this goes against my narrative, but taking cross-sex hormones weakens my body like no other. I'm still athletically capable, but it's not like if a 28-year-old young, not being judged stereotypical, but Afghanistan person came rushing at me with a knife, I would probably die because I'm not physically strong enough to defend myself. I can hold my own. I'm not afraid. And like I spoke of in the Jubilee thing with the bathroom debate with Anne Alexander, and a few people caught this, that I called him out for being a pussy, because he was like, I, dressed like this, should be able to go in the bathroom that I choose and the one I feel safe in. And that's when I chimed in. I said, I did my 5 to 6 year thing about how women 5 to 6 years ago were okay with me walking in the restroom, but now it's changed. They've spoken and they don't want that. So, and I looked at him and I go, I know some people aren't capable of defending themselves, but I am, and I'm not afraid to be in the men's room, you know? So, and people are like, Jessica just called that dude a low key pussy. It's like, yeah, because I did. I looked at him. I go, I know you think you can't protect yourself in the men's room, that you're in danger because you look like a clown. You know, but it doesn't matter what he wants. It's narcissistic of him to say that he's in danger. And again, it goes back to the sports inclusion thing. I think they just want to feel validated. They just want to feel accepted. And they feel like if they don't get this access to bathrooms and women's spaces, they're not valid. They're not a real trans person if they don't get this. And that's what we need to get the message out to them. I say this on Twitter all the time. I'm arguing with people. They're like, oh, you're this and that. I'm like, no, I need validation from nobody. I need to be accepted by nobody. I already gave all that up in my life. You know, I lost all my friends. Most of my family stuck with me. My brother, my cousins, my sister, they all either was cool with it or, you know, was like, hey, you got to come out to dinner with our family. I want them to meet you and this and that. And so it's nice, but you don't need that to live. And did society or did social media create that dependency on validation, on acceptance? Was that created by ourselves? You know,
I think so in a way. And I think the mantra, trans women are women, trans women are women, trans women are women, that really stuck for a while. And I think a lot of people, I mean, there were certainly outliers that were like, no, from the beginning. But I think a lot of people wanting to feel like they needed to lift these people up, you know, went along with that and said, yeah, trans women are women, stop bullying them, stop being so mean. And it just went on and on and on. And then all of a sudden the slippery slope with the self-ID came into the picture. And now we've got, you know, men in the women's locker room in Planet Fitness, walking around, and people are waking up now to the fact that even if that guy is in transition to be a woman, he shouldn't be in the ladies' locker room like that, especially with kids there.
Yeah, we talked about that in the Jubilee thing too. I hate to keep referencing that, but yeah, just being self-aware, you know. And this morning, I actually I didn't want anybody to think I was doing this as I'm reaching for some help, or I'm reaching out because I'm depressed or something. But somebody posted about being envious of, like, there's two little disclaimers we always said. If you give a crossdresser $10,000, they'll go buy clothes, shoes, heels, and makeup. If you give a trans person $10,000, they're going to go get surgery. That's the difference. Like, some are just doing it for fetish, bad faith actors as trans. They're not really trans. They're either autogynephile or a crossdresser. I call them weekend warriors. And that's a totally fine lifestyle to have. But so yeah, you can either take that money and enhance your body or just buy aesthetically pleasing things. But to get
Mm,
back to on the topic, what I guess you're asking, like the bad faith actors and being self-aware. Like I got yelled at today, or I got a bunch of sympathy tweets because I was like, somebody said something about when I see a woman, I'm jealous. I'm envy. I turn red with envy, and I'm just like, God, look at her hips, look at her shoulders, look at her arms, or every woman has a key feature that I was like, ooh, that's beautiful. That looks great. I wish I could emulate that somehow if I could
right.
fix my body to be that way. So the envy runs deep within trans people to be more adjacent to the opposite sex, and I think that's also the difference between an autogynephile and a trans is that, I don't want to sleep with that woman, not in no way, shape, or form. I want to be her. I want to be like her, not be her. But that's the difference is we're not physically attracted to them. I just want that look, so, and that experience. But
Well, they say that autogynephiles, what it is that you're aroused by the idea of dressing or being a woman,
yeah.
dressing like you're being a woman.
Yeah, and my last video got a lot of traction on that too, where I was like, there's nothing sexy about what I wear on a daily basis. Like this is a hoodie and a bra. I'm literally wearing sweatpants underneath right now, my pajamas.
Right.
So it's, on a daily day basis, I wear leggings, some Nike shoes, and a hoodie, a large baggy pullover hoodie. And because of my line of work where I work every day, people see if my boobs are hanging out, they're like start hitting on me, flirting with me, thinking I'm doing this for the sex, and I'm not. And it gets annoying. So I've learned, like many women, biological women, that you can't dress flamboyantly or you're just going to get hit on all day. And I'm not
You're
saying I'm
going to get
beautiful.
negative attention. Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
not the
unwanted
attention I want. And I said something to that effect on Twitter this morning. I was like, try being old and ugly and see how bad the envy is. And everybody's like, Jessica, you're not old, you're not ugly. Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, I should have deleted the tweet because I was like, I wasn't trying to reach out I wasn't, what is it, chasing likes or chasing sympathy. I didn't
Right.
need the sympathy. I just was trying to be funny. And it didn't come out
Right.
that way. A bunch of people are like, oh my God, somebody call Jessica and see if she's okay. Like, I'm going to take
Things
myself out.
tend to not. Things tend to hit differently in writing than they do when you say them, right? Like when you do that on Twitter, it's like a whole different.
Yeah. If I don't use 100,000 emojis, then I'm not gonna get my point across. It's probably so. But on that sports and inclusion thing, I wanted to talk about too, because it's always a trans activist that's speaking at you see these board meetings, and it's the screaming trans or the screaming LGBT people, like we want rights, and when do we want them now? And you never get to see someone like me on camera talking to a school board or a foundation board about unincluding myself from sports just because it's the right thing to do. And I can go back to all the tests, I can recite numbers, I can tell you that the average man is 12% more physically capable than the average woman. The average across the board is 12%. In different sports it's higher and lower. A really fun one I learned the other day was, did you know that a man's grip strength, so my ability to hold on to something or just grab you,
Yeah.
the average male grip strength, say it's 12 pounds, right?
Right.
That the highest grip strength of the female ever tested is 12 pounds. Okay.
Wow.
The average male grip strength is equivalent to the strongest female grip strength ever. So yeah, of course women should be afraid. Like if I grab you, like I'm not letting go of you. Like your grip strength is nothing to mine. So
Right.
it's counterdicts my video I did a while ago about grip strength testing. When they test trans athletes, they test grip strength before and a year after testosterone, and the trans athletes lost grip strength over time. But in hockey, that grip strength means nothing if I'm coming at you full force and I check you into the boards. Who gives a shit how long I was able to hold on to a bar? Like it's not going to
Right.
stop me from
Right.
punching you in the face as hard as I can, and it
So
really hurting.
yeah. So you mentioned something earlier about, so you've been on hormones for 9 years, and you made the point when we were talking about the military stuff to say that you would have been you're a more weakened. I don't know if weakened's the right word, but
I am.
you're weaker
Yeah.
than you were before you were on hormones, right?
Yep.
But despite all that, you're still probably worlds away stronger than the average woman like myself.
Yeah, and again, it's not, and I say this in my speech at the California thing, it's, I'm still faster in my chosen sport of mountain biking, which is what I race now. And the motorcycles, I race those. But in mountain biking, I'm still faster, even running, than girls that are 8 to 10 years younger than me. And I'm 49. These girls I'm racing against are in their late 30s, early 40s, and I can still outperform them. And my hormone levels, as you get more, as you become more and more trans, like as you've been on your hormones for a long time, your endocrinologist will only test you like every 6 months. Just once you get your levels dialed in and you know how much medication you're taking every day, it's pretty simple. You don't need to test every 3 months like they do when they're young, because their body's constantly changing the hormone levels. So, my hormone levels are at or below, usually below that of an average female. And my endo hates me for that. She's like, would you get your testosterone back up? You were dangerously close to being unhealthy with your testosterone levels. And I'm like, no, I want to be more feminine and I can't have testosterone in my system. So it's detrimental. It's bad for my body to be on estrogen. The male body was not meant to be that way. And it's hard on us and it takes a toll. Like I am tired all the time, like I get up for work and I just don't want to go to work. But I mean, we all have that, but like I am physically exhausted all of the time. And
you think
it's
it's
because
because of the hormones?
100%. I don't have any energy. Like I struggle to get out the door every morning to run or ride my mountain bike or whatever. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. Kind of some days I'm like, oh, why do I take this medication? It doesn't do much for someone my age. Cross-sex hormones don't do anything after puberty, in my opinion. Now, they did work with Blair. Like she started like 18, 19. That would have been my target age to start, is right about 19 years old. And if you take hormones and eat the right foods, you can develop fatty tissue in the right places, hips, breasts. Honestly, other than the soft skin and the lack of hair growth anywhere, like I don't have, I know when my hormones are out of level because I can start to feel some arm hair come back. And those are the only two things, soft skin. And people say I look young for my age. They say I don't look 50. I'm like, okay. But I still get called, B. Arthur from the Golden Girls all the time. So
Really?
yeah. Or the ones I
No.
hate, when people say, what celebrity do you look like? People always say, Jessica looks like Bon Jovi or Ron Stewart. And I'm like, thanks, you guys. Like, I'm really,
You're like, thanks a lot.
I'm fucking trying here. Like, see all this shit I've done? Like, I've got surgeries. I don't look like Bon Jovi, but, the hair is what does it. So I had some lesbian questions for you.
Oh, yeah, sure. Go ahead.
If you don't mind.
Fire off.
So I don't want to premise it about myself too much, but I get grief from my own community about how late transitioners should never transition and that we're not legitimate. And I want to know, how do other lesbians react to lesbians with children? Because it's the same with trans, but how is it inside the lesbian community? Are you guys taken seriously if you have children?
I think it's a mix, and I think it depends on. So when I was a kid, right, the cool thing was to say that you were bisexual. And when I was growing up, so like in the late 90s, early 2000s, when I was in high school, people were just starting to kind of come out of the closet more, but people wanted to kind of be like one foot on one side and one foot on the other. So if you said you were bi, you kind of still could be seen, as normal, but you were bi. And I just remember the covers of magazines. A lot of celebrities were coming out and saying they were bisexual. That was the thing. And I never really identified as bisexual. I always kind of just knew I was a lesbian. I just knew it. I dated guys. I love guys. Don't get me wrong, but I don't have that thing that I do for women. I'm a lesbian. It is what it is. It's just a natural. It's an orientation.
I love men, obviously, but yeah. So there's nothing wrong with that. Men are stupid. I know. I've been one for 49 years, but yeah. So they don't. Do you guys get singled out? Like, does another lesbian look at another one with kids and say, "Oh, she's not legit. She's what do they call it? Lipstick lesbian?" Like, is that a thing?
Or like a gold star lesbian, so a lesbian that's never slept with slept with a man or something like that. Yeah, I think it's mixed, and I think it depends on who you're talking to.
I didn't know that was a thing.
I do think though that some lesbians are like, ugh, they're bi. They're probably just going to go back to dating another guy. I do know some bisexual women that are just, I'm dating who I'm dating, and I'm not going to run away to a guy just because because I got sick of being with a girl. Like, I do think that people really are truly bisexual, and they do get left out sometimes because I think lesbians have been hurt by bisexuals. In when they were younger, it's always the bi girl that dumped you for a guy or something like that. That's the stereotype, but I think it comes with maturity too. I mean, I think, where I am today, when I hear that, she's a lesbian, but she has 3 kids, I'm like, well, that's life. That was her journey, and she had children, and then decided that later on that, you know, she
Wasn't for
really
her.
wasn't for her, and she has these kids, and that's great, and she's a mother, but she doesn't want to be with men. Okay.
Yeah, I
Um,
respect that of her. And I just was asking because I get a lot of heat for being trans and fathering a child. Like, they're like, you can't be a woman, you fathered a child. I'm like, no shit, I'm not a woman. Like, I just think
what?
like this because this is what makes me happy. This is what comforts my
Right.
head. But
Yeah.
yes, we are not taken seriously if we have a kid, So a friend of mine, Jenna, so she met this girl that had 3 kids already, and they got into a relationship. And I tried to tell Jenna, I go, she's not a lesbian. She's going to go back. And I don't have a great gaydar, as they say. The main reason in my head was she's got 3 kids with a dude. There's no way she's a lesbian. Like, she would have known by the time the first kid came out that this isn't for her. She's not a lesbian. She's just um testing the waters or experimenting or having fun. And that's why I frown on
And that can be, in some cases, that's true.
yeah, and I
In
frown
some
on
cases, that's true.
bisexuals. Like, I got in a big fight the other day with somebody about bisexual being real and should bisexual be part of the LGBT community? And I said, absolutely not. It should just be LG, and then the T should be left alone, like out in the desert to do our thing and blend in. Like, I'm okay with that. Like, I don't need to be a part of the
Yeah.
lesbian and gay community. I don't want to. Lesbians treat me horribly in public settings, like at a
Really?
bar. Oh yeah, when I was growing up being trans, like going into a gay bar, lesbians just like
Wow.
I don't want to be a part of that community. I want to stand with my trans sisters, but even that gets a little rocky sometimes. But my theory on the bisexual thing is that I call them sluts because, in my opinion, a bisexual person just says that they're going to sleep with anybody. Like, they'll sleep with either sex, whoever they're attracted to that night. Like, how is that a marginalized community? How is that a minority? It's not. And I'm not trying to play the
That's a really
oppression.
interesting take.
Yeah,
That's a really,
I'm not trying to
yeah.
play the oppression Olympics, like who's more oppressed, the lesbians, the gays, or the trans. Like, but the bisexuals, they can go back tomorrow and date the opposite sex, and it's no different. So there is a lifestyle, and when they're seen together, 2 gay men, it's like people are in society are still like, oh, or 2 lesbians, and society is so sexually driven. When they see 2 lesbians holding hands, they're just like, oh yeah, that's hot, and it's
It's
like
it's ridiculous.
it's so
Things that
ridiculous.
have
It's
been
so
said to
stereotyped.
me.
And so, how are you as a bisexual person deserving of the same oppression points that me as a trans person gets? Again, it's not the oppression Olympics. I like to throw that out at people, but
Right.
I, when it comes to bisexual being like, oh, woe is me, like you, like
Oh,
try
yeah,
being
I think
me.
yes, there's a stigma with trans people still, for sure. There's a stigma.
More
It's a
lately.
thing. And now, like, the queer community is making it worse. The self-ID thing is making it worse. It's not making it better.
Mhm.
And now we've added on all these other letters to the alphabet, confusing the fuck out of everybody.
It's a 2SL.
So I feel like you guys are catching the most heat, even when you're not, like, you're in the category, I think, of the most oppressed, Jessica, because you're just literally trying to live your life and be fair and
I got the
honest.
oppression trophies. Yay. I'll change all those trophies to oppression points. I'll go
You're
for
just
that.
trying to be fair and open and honest. And I think there's a lot of dishonesty happening with the trans trenders and the activism. They're
Mhm.
dishonest. They're not being
100%.
upfront about what's really going on here, and they're being very deceptive. And they're hurting people like you, and they're hurting people like the rest of the community. Because I feel like they don't even really. They just have an agenda. They don't really care about anything but what's coming out of their mouth at the moment.
Yeah, that's definitely the queer side, the activist side, and the people who aren't really trans, the bad faith actors, I like to call them. But there's also those people like Alexander that think they get to do whatever they want just because they can claim the non-binary thing. And I hold non-binary right up there with bisexual. Like, you guys, it's a decision you made. Your body didn't force you to transition like mine did. My mind and my body came together and said, for whatever reason, this is not me. I hated myself looking in the mirror every day. Couldn't go out in public as a boy. Didn't want to. Couldn't stand it. Hated every minute of it. Always wore hats, baggy hoodies, like anything to hide the fact that I was a man. And didn't like my facial hair. Constantly shaving all my life, which is what aged my skin a little bit too much. But
Uh-huh.
so
Wow,
yeah, it's
that's quite a thing. Where do you think the dysphoria and, like, I know that I feel like we don't have enough research on all this stuff, to be honest, but, like, where did that's just something it's like a mental disorder. It just happens to you. You
Well,
have it or you don't.
yeah,
What do you think?
girl, I'm glad you brought this up. So I, even as a trans person, now 9 years on therapy, and I saw a psychologist for 2 years prior to this, but I get lost in all of the medical terminology now, because back in the day there was the DSM-4, and then the DSM-5 came out. I don't even know what it stands for, but I just know trans people use it all the time. The DSM-5 says that gender dysphoria is a mental illness. Now the DSM-6 just came out. Gender dysphoria is not a mental illness. And then they're calling it rapid onset gender dysphoria, RDS, or whatever. What? Like, why? There's so many different, it keeps changing its course. Like, it's rapid onset. There's no such thing as rapid onset. It's gender dysphoria. There's no such thing as gender dysphoria. It's just a mental condition. It's not a mental condition. It's a physical condition. Nobody will make up their mind. So I, as an older trans elder, we call elder trans, I don't care. I literally don't want the medical diagnosis. I don't want those oppression points of being medically diagnosed as gender dysphoric. So would I have gotten 30, 40, $60,000 in surgery and be on hormones for 9 years of my life, ruined $100,000+ career just to be like this? That's, for people to say I'm not a real trans, just blows my mind. I'm like, well, and that's fine. They can accuse me of being, whatever they want. It's a free country. I don't care. I'm living for me. And I refuse to use that word. I'm living my truth. I didn't say that. But I'm doing this for me. As narcissistic as that sounds, I needed to self-medicate, and this is how I did it,
Yeah, the standards of care. Do you have any idea what you think from your experiences of what you've seen out there in the world, what that standard of care should actually look like? Because right now it's just kind of a wide open door, I think.
Yeah, about 2 years ago, the attorney general for, I think it was Mississippi or something, changed the laws, and trans people start freaking out. This was not the start of it, but this was early on in this whole trans rights or human rights advocacy, that the state of, I want to say Mississippi or Alabama, one of the two, they changed the laws. And some of the laws I can barely remember now. I read through the whole thing, and because I wanted to go online and argue with people about this, and it was important to me. So they were saying, oh, it's going to be illegal to be trans in Mississippi. I'm moving. It's like, no, it's not illegal. They're just saying, oh, this is the big one. So they were saying that you have to have 2 years of psychology reports, that you visit a psychiatrist or a psychologist, and confirmed your gender identity. It wasn't you got affirmed, it was they confirmed. Okay, there's a difference. Affirming and confirming, right? So now everybody's affirming, and we need confirmation. So that was one rule. 2 years, then you would be placed on hormones and allowed to transition, and then allowed to get your surgeries. But after that, there was a 1-year checkup mandatory on your social media accounts, that the government would actually dive in and look at your social media accounts and make sure that you weren't influenced to being trans via social media. And everybody was like, how could they dare? That's invasion of privacy. And, they're just trying to make it so hard to be trans. It's like, yeah, they are, because it's costing taxpayers money. When,
I mean, the thing
Medicaid
is about,
and,
I was just going to say about the social media aspect of it is, if they're going to do that, what's the criteria, right? How do you measure whether or not someone was influenced?
I think that was geared for more of the teens that were transitioning, because at that point 2 years ago, we'd seen this huge spike in trans identifying teenagers, and that's been the problem ever since. Especially girls. Yeah, girls transitioning to boys. I talked about this in my last video, that it just blows my mind that a woman would ever want to do that to her body. Yes, people could say the same shit about me, but as much as I hate to say this, except for my facial surgery, everything I've done can be reversed except for lower surgery, but I can go right back to being a boy tomorrow. Like, no makeup, stop taking testosterone, or stop taking estrogen. My facial hair would come back, arm hair. I'd still be bald, but my muscles would start to grow again. I'd be back on my natural testosterone. I would look more mannish than I already do, and I can reverse it. But a girl taking testosterone, OMG, that is so life-altering. That is so, that you can't ever come back from. There's facial hair growth. Everything that I just said would happen to a girl. Arm hair, facial hair, voice changes, never goes away. It's always fucking ruined. You've ruined yourself for the rest of your life.
Why they're handing out a controlled substance like a cool thing. They're handing out like candy to these young women. And these young women are going online. I've seen these videos where these, they're trans or whatever, or they think they're trans, and they're like wearing earrings that have the little vial of testosterone.
Oh God.
And it's like a fashion statement.
And
I'm
guess
like, crazy.
Yeah, and guess what? These I can cut them back off. Like I can take them off.
Right.
Once you lop those off of a natural female, they have to get these again if they want real boobs. They're
Right.
never gonna have real boobs. They're gone forever.
And you can't breastfeed because they've taken the natural breast tissue away.
Yeah,
and I don't think that the breast ducts, like they don't come back. Like they're gone forever.
ever.
And I don't think these doctors are not informing people. Well, they might be informing people.
They are
but
now because the
people
lawsuits are starting to hit. Yeah. They weren't back in the day. They weren't telling the girls that, oh yeah, by the way, when a female takes testosterone, your womb will start to dry up and atrophy. You will get a hysterectomy, whether it's a natural hysterectomy or we go in and surgically perform it because you start bleeding. It's done. A woman on testosterone long enough will need a hysterectomy, and nobody ever says anything like that. Like I'm like the only one. I'm not even a woman, and I know this. This is part of a female's life. It sucks. Breast cancer, cervical cancer. I have to deal with prostate issues. Not currently, but like I have to be aware of that as a boy. Like a biological man has to be aware of his natural body's deterioration. It's the way it is.
Yeah, and that's another thing that's terribly confusing for people. That I don't think people are. I think that in the masses, these specific issues, people aren't even thinking about what the truth of the matter is, or what the consequences are of this stuff. And because it's not floating to the top of the conversation like it should be floated to the top of the conversation. Like those should be the first things in the discussion. If you're going to have a transition, like what are the repercussions for this? And do those things, does transitioning out, balance that or what? Like I think it's a really, really terrible thing to have to put your body through. And if you don't have to do it, or if you really don't, you know what I mean, then you shouldn't. But if you really feel strongly enough and you understand the risks and you think you'll live a happier life, then by all means, I think that it's totally okay. And plus, once you reach a certain age, I think that you're capable of making those decisions. But that's another thing that's a debate, is what age is the appropriate age to make the decision to transition or not transition.
27. That's mine. No. I mean,
Really?
yeah. So, well, that's the frontal cortex isn't fully developed until a person reaches 26 years old. That's physically, that's a biological fact. And some children do know that they are trans right away, and they can always socially transition until they're of age, in my opinion, is my stance on it. Right now, the main thing is let's protect the women. Let's get these men out of women's prisons. Let's get the men out of rape shelters and crisis centers for women. Growing up with my mom, she was actually got a really good job. Once I was old enough to support myself, she was an advocate for the police department where she lives. And guess what her topic was? Battered and abused women. So I would hear all of her stories from bringing work home, seeing my mom's face after dealing with women who were sexually abused or just physically abused, not even sexually, just physically abused. And how they won't leave their partner, and just watching the horror on their face, knowing that they're going right back into that abusive relationship. That's crazy to me. So I've always long had that sympathy for women, and I don't feel sorry for them. I'm empathetic to them. That's why I fight so hard for spaces in sports. Is I watched my mom go through hell, counsel these women to not hate themselves and to stand up for themselves and walk away from an abusive relationship. And now they're being forced right back into that abusive relationship, whether it's in sports or in a prison cell. They're forced to be in the position against a biological man. That's not fair, and it's maybe not what they want, but they're told they have to like it. And when you're,
it's not ethical.
And the problem with abusive relationships is the women tend to be more kind, nurturing, caring, concerned, right? So they won't leave the man because they care for him, even though he hits them. They'll never leave because that's the attention they get is their version of love. And that's how they survive. And to them to leave that physical abuse that would be worse than the actual physical abuse. The mental torment of not having an attention like that would be worse than the actual abuse itself. So yeah, that's where my empathy and my strive to fight for women's safety is that's where it comes from too. Also,
wow. Well,
I know that was a little deep.
No, I that's great, and I appreciate the honesty, because I think more people need to hear stories like this and understand that this fight isn't just about trans rights. This fight is about other things, like what you just stated, and that women need that protection. And sometimes it's not all about trans people.
But wait, what did you just say? You take that back. I need to be the center of attention. I need to be validated, and everybody needs to accept my pronouns.
Right. I gotta go.
Yep.
I'm
I
kidding.
leave. When people say I got pronouns, I'm like, start walking away. Just go on. See you later. I'm not gonna lie, like when people accuse me of being, not a legitimate trans person because I have a kid or because I transitioned late in my 30s or whatever, it bothers me. I'm not gonna lie. Like I get, I don't want to say I get down on myself, but it bums me out, that's like, well, yeah, I wish I could have transitioned when I was 20, but I didn't have the internet until I was almost 28 years old. There was no online things, like it didn't exist. We barely had cell phones, when in my late 20s. So yeah, it hurts a little bit, but I push on. It's not the end of my life, but I don't need that validation from my own community, let alone, society. I would like society just to ignore me, to be honest with you. I don't, the only reason I'm in the public eye now is to protect women's sports. That's it. Like that, I think we can get a complete ban on this trans inclusion thing and get that sealed up for at least another 4 years. That would be great. Probably never happen in California, but we've got 23 states right now that it is illegal for a trans woman to compete in a female sport. But that's only if the sport is sanctioned by the federal governing body. So it doesn't include the private entities like UCI Cycling and USA Cycling, stuff like that, like cycling industries. They're still allowed to let the trans inclusion happen. But when we're talking federally funded sporting events, those will be a complete ban. And then I can turn my focus on prisons, like
Yeah. Oh, well, best of luck with that, because I
Yeah.
really think that's gonna make a difference in the long run. That there's more people out there talking about these issues, and it's not just the screaming and the yelling coming from the far left. And I don't know what they're screaming and yelling for, honestly, at this point. Like I said.
So, once we get that turned around, things I think might mellow out a little bit. I do wonder though, once say there is a complete and total ban on trans inclusion in trans sports, and then maybe even the bathroom issue, that's a tough one for me. As far as I don't want Blair White or Brianna Ivy going into a men's bathroom. I absolutely do not want that, and 9 out of 10 women could look at Blair White and couldn't tell me that she was a biological man at one point. They would never know.
Right.
Brianna Ivy, the same. They look 100% like a female. So those trans people deserve to be in the women's room. They've either been on hormones so long like me that nothing works, or they've had the surgery and they're practically harmless anyway. They're no different than a regular female. So the bathroom one is touchy. There's no way to police it.
Well, and what's weird is that I actually brought this up on my last video with the middle gay in our conversation, that the bathroom thing never used to be a problem. I don't remember it being an issue until activism made it an issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I remember being in gay bars and there were trans people around and nobody gave a shit.
No, girls expected me to go in the women's room back in the day. Like I would go to goth night or whatever, and they would be like, "Yeah, get in here. What are you doing?" Like I kind of headed toward the men's room. They're like, "No, you go in this one. It's fine." I'm like, "Okay." So it feels weird, but okay. So yeah, the bathroom.
It's become a political talking point. They politicized the shit out of all this stuff, and it's made it so much harder on everybody.
I just want to get back to fighting for women's rights. That's what's so important to me. So and again, that's what. Yeah, I appreciate it. And I need the women's support as well. I don't get supported by all the women, but a lot of the women that do support me, it's important to me. And I value that. That means a lot to me. So, doing that, it's important.
Yep. Jump on board that Aunt Jessica train, everybody, because this is the stuff right here. This is what's going to get things going in the way that they should be, in a fair and safe way, is people like you speaking out and saying, I can't thank you enough for that. And when I first saw you on Jubilee and you said that you don't even use the female restroom anymore, I was like, wow, like that, you don't hear that from a trans woman very often, because all we're hearing is women being pushed on. So, thank you for taking a step back and understanding that there's a lot more nuance to this than just black and white. And I think that's important too. And that you have the ability to have these conversations with people and still, come out the other side having learned something, and hopefully other people can learn from you too.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Well, I appreciate you guys for tuning in, and I want to say thanks and smash the like button, subscribe if you can, and leave us a comment. Let us know what you think.
Yes. Thank you so much. And thank you, Jessica, for joining me today. It's been a great time. I hope to have you back again soon.
All right, Vikki. Thanks, girl. We'll see you.
Thanks.